Our next guest is a man who doesn't mince words. He's had a lot to say about the government's Paycheck Protection Program, politicians, and now about his state reopening for business. Joining us is Mark Cuban. He's the owner of the NBA's Dallas Mavericks. He's also chairman of AXS TV. And Mark, it's great to be talking to you today. What do you think about how Texas is going about this at this point? How are you feeling?
You know, I don't feel bad about it, and I'll tell you why. You know, we've had good success with pickup and delivery for restaurants, and the governor expanded it to any business, and I think that's a good thing. That's more of an extension than an opening program. And on the second part of that, he said you couldn't open up a business and open it up for more than 25% of your capacity, which really for most small businesses means you're probably not going to open up at all. So what we're really seeing is just a small subset of businesses making themselves available to the public. And I think that'll be, you know, some good knowledge for us, and we'll see what happens.
You're right in thinking that probably a lot of businesses won't open if you can only have 25% capacity. I've seen some restaurants that have said in South Carolina, please don't allow us to open back up for eat-in dining because it's going to mean we have to hire more people. Yep. And being dine-in will only take from the money we're getting right now from the people who are taking out. So what do you think? Who is going to open up in a situation like that?
There's a lot of problems associated with it. I think this is more for perception than reality in terms of, you know, trying to create the perception you're opening up when you're not really, because there's a lot of downstream problems for small businesses. One, if you're going to bring back your employees, then they have to come back. They can't remain on unemployment. And particularly for tip-based employees, unless the employer is going to guarantee them a much higher rate because you're going to have diminished number of customers, then they're not going to want to come back to work. They're going to want to stay on unemployment. That creates one problem. If they do come back to work because you feel that you can make the numbers work, well, depending on, you know, where your employees live, they may have to take public transportation. So in Dallas, that could be the bus system, that could be the rail system. And now you're adding a big load onto the rail system, and you're increasing their risk of catching COVID, which obviously is not going to benefit your business if that happens. And then there's the cost of trying to make sure that you can get your business open just to keep it safe. You know, do you have to deal with your HVAC system? What about sterilization? What about, you know, disposal of masks or other things? So there's all these downstream issues that really haven't been addressed yet, and small businesses haven't been provided the support they need to actually get open. So I think it's more show than go, but we'll see what happens.
Hey, Mark, let's talk about the second wave of loans that are going to be available for small businesses. I think all of us have kind of seen an evolution in our views of what should happen with this, and everybody's got their own nuance. I think in the beginning you were very adamant that this should be going to small businesses, not big businesses. But then I've seen a more nuanced take from you that the companies you invest in shouldn't be penalized for having a wealthy investor who's investing in them, that they should be allowed to go to the tranche and say that they're a small business and they qualify. And I guess everybody's got their own different perspective on this. It does get more complicated as we kind of follow the money and see where it's going.
Yeah, it really depends. You know, with the affiliate rules with the Small Business Administration are kind of complex and confusing. And so what I was trying to do with the SBA and the Treasury is get clarification. Because, for instance, I have Shark Tank companies that I'm not involved in the day-to-day activities, but because I have 20% of them, let's just say I gave them, you know, $25,000 for 20% of the company, they've been precluded in some cases from being able to apply. And so then the natural response is, well, you've got Mark Cuban as an investor. Well, to just try to give them money is either going to dilute them, becomes a loan, or if I just want to grant it to them, then I actually have to pay taxes on that as a gift. I have to pay gift taxes for it, and that creates its own set of problems. So, again, it's a set of circumstances where I think it hasn't been all the way thought through, and that's not a surprise given how quickly this had to be done. And so I was just trying to really push through clarification more than anything else.
Hey, Mark, I was curious about what you thought of how some of these PPP loans are going out. One of the things that's been quite surprising is that in states that have been the hardest hit, and obviously I'm a New Yorker, but New York, New Jersey, the tri-state area, obviously, you know, the percentage of PPP loans that are being approved are something on the order of about 25%. I mentioned yesterday, Nebraska is getting, 90% or 80% of their loans approved. You're looking at 70% rates in Montana, Minnesota, and Wisconsin.
And that's exactly what you should
you?
expect. Yeah, that's exactly what you expect the way the program was designed. Because what happens is the banks are the ones doing the approvals. And so by definition, your banks in New York and any dense area with a lot of businesses are going to have more customers, more applications, and it's going to be more difficult for them to get through those loans, where in smaller communities, it's going to be easier for them to process those loans, and you're going to get more approvals. What I've suggested to everybody that will listen is if you're a small business and you happen to bank at a big bank, it's okay to go find a small community bank and apply there as well. There's no rules against having multiple applications, and you just can't take multiple loans. So, if you're in New York City and there's a small bank that's got a high approval rate because they're doing each application individually as opposed to a bigger bank who has to process tens of thousands of loans, and it's first come, first serve, and so you're, again, going to be down on the list, then apply as many different places as you can. So that's part one. Part two is there's still a lot of confusion for independent contractors, and that's where the real problems occur. For independent contractors, you have to go and show your 2018 and 2019 tax returns, I think it is, and that creates a lot of problems because the independent contractors who are not making money right now have been given the ability, like all of us, to defer filing our 2019 tax returns. So a lot of them are in that catch-22 where you need to have a 2019 tax return, but you haven't filed it yet because you don't have it, and then you're part of that race to get funded. So it's created a lot of unintended consequences. But again, now with the second tranche, get that 2019 payroll tax or 2019 income tax filled out. It doesn't even have to be filed, and go to a bank. And it's all these complications, you just have to keep on applying and trying to find the right bank to help you.
Hey, Mark, you think it's really the bank's fault, or is it how the SBA is deciding which loans to process first or which banks to take them from? Because
no, it's not
I
anybody's
can understand
fault.
that the big banks have more.
Yeah, it's not anybody's fault.
But I've actually heard that some of the big banks have loans that are waiting to be processed that have been sitting there.
Well, okay, so there's a couple things there. So with the second tranche, the SBA didn't want big banks to be able to just throw hundreds of thousands of loans into the system. So they put some governors into the program where I think they could only file 350 loans at a time in order to give some of the smaller banks a chance to get in the queue, right? Because the big banks had automated the process and were just sending a boatload of applications. And so they wanted to make it so smaller banks could have smaller customers. That was good in some respects for smaller banks and their customers, but if you were a customer at a large bank, you were kind of stuck because, at 350 at a time, they might not get to you ever. And so, again, law of unintended consequences, the SBA was trying to make it fair, but unfortunately they made it more difficult for customers of larger banks and put large banks in a bad position. So it wasn't, it wasn't anybody's fault. They were just trying to find a solution, and they didn't. And, I recommended to them, I recommended to Treasury that it should be a lottery so that whenever anybody applied, it goes into a central repository at Treasury. Treasury just randomly picks 50,000 loans to approve. They see what the total is, and however much money left they have, they go to the next 50,000 until the money's gone. That's the only way to be objective and fair. Trying to be subjective and say, okay, you have more need than another is almost impossible.
Yeah. Thank you. That's thoughtful. Mark, appreciate your time. It's good to see you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Becky. Thanks, Andrew.